call normal, regular Village of Corrales governing body meeting. Welcome to the Village of Corrales. This is Earth Week, in case you didn't know that, and today is Earth Day. Our goal is to build a clean and greener future for our children. Well, for us too, I guess. Okay, so please turn your phones off or set them on vibrate so you don't disturb anybody who's speaking. And then once you've done that, please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Counselor Burkett is on his way. He locked his keys in the car at the basketball game.
Okay.
Thank you.
So Burkett's on his way, but also Brooke and Knight are not going to be here.
Also, Brooke is on the Zoom.
He's on the Zoom.
He is.
I am on Zoom.
Very good. Okay, so I need a motion to approve the agenda. Oh, Counselor Mira.
Here.
Counselor Woolman.
Here.
Counselor Murray.
Here.
And Counselor Alsobrooke.
Here.
Okay, good. And Zach found his keys and he's on his way. Okay. All right, I need a motion to approve the agenda, please.
So moved.
And second, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Thank you. First is approval of appointments. We have three reappointments and one new appointment. Can I get a motion to approve the appointments to the different committees, boards, commissions?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Very good. Thank you. Okay, now we'll move on to our presentation for P&M's Local Government Affairs Liaison, Deandra Lopez, and Associate Director of Wildfire Risk and Vegetation Management, Thad Petzold. Who's going to start? Deandra.
Good evening, Mayor, councilors. Thank you for the opportunity to represent P&M tonight and to present our public safety power shutoff and wildfire mitigation plan. My name is Deandra Lopez. I'm the local government community manager for P&M, representing the Albuquerque area, which includes Corrales. With me today is Thad Petzold. As stated before, he is the Associate Director of Wildfire Management and our Vegetation Management as well. And with that, I will turn it over to him.
Mayor, councilors, yes, sir. Thanks for having me. I just wanted to talk a little bit about what P&M's been doing the last few years regarding wildfire mitigation. Back in 2020, the company recognized that we in the Southwest are subject to some of the same issues that are going on in California, in Arizona, Idaho, Colorado. And so we decided that we wanted to put together a program that would protect our communities from a power line caused ignition. And so from that point, we hired some consultants that had experience in California. We put together a program, the Wildfire Mitigation Plan, the WMP, and we based it on a lot of the California tenets. And those tenets essentially are: find the areas where you're most susceptible to wildfire, increase your inspections of both vegetation and facilities in those areas, and then go into increased enhanced vegetation management and danger tree or hazard tree management. In addition to that, we started looking at the assets that we had in the field, looking at changing things out from normal fusing to non-expulsion fusing, things of that nature, looking into tree wire in some instances, and then in some instances using targeted undergrounding where we felt we had some areas that required that. In addition to that, we have changed some of our system settings during extreme weather. And we have changed some of our equipment to make it more sensitive during those extreme times that would allow us to shut power off if we had any contact or a fault. Doing all those things that like we have been doing gets us a certain amount of the way, but it doesn't get us all the way. And so last year we instituted a public safety power shutoff policy, and that's what I'm here to talk about a little bit. One of the things that we do is that we monitor weather 7 days out, and we have we put together through one of our consultants, a fire scientist, something called a composite risk index, which essentially measures max wind speed or wind gusts multiplied by foot fire length with the ELM model. And so each one of our service areas that we have created or we basically deemed them what we call high fire risk areas, or HFAs, which those areas are Clayton, Santa Fe, Las Vegas, East Mountains, the Bosque, Ruidoso, Silver City, and then we have a couple of transmission corridors through eastern New Mexico and western New Mexico. And so those areas were the areas that we really focused on with all those changes, the increased inspections, vegetation management, all that kind of stuff. With the composite risk index, it gives us a 7-day outlook of what this extreme weather is going to look like. And I forgot to mention the way that it's based is we took over 10 years of climatology geographically set in those areas so that we would know what kind of weather they can handle. We know we're in New Mexico, so we have very dry, very windy springs. And so it's not a matter if there's just a red flag, we're going to turn the power off, or the winds are high. It has to hit certain thresholds that we know we're in a situation where if we don't turn the power off, there could be a potential consequential fire. And we actually engaged in a public safety power shutoff last Thursday in Las Vegas. We shut the power off due to the incredible low humidity. It was 8% humidity. Wind gusts ended up being up to close to 80 miles an hour, 79 miles an hour at the airport, and the higher temperature. And so we hit those levels, and we ended up going ahead and shutting the power off to about 2,300 customers in Las Vegas. But we don't do that. We don't take it lightly. We certainly, like I said, we're looking 7 days ahead. Once we know that there's a potential event on the horizon, then we will notify first responders in the area. We'll notify city leaders such as yourself, letting them know that there's a potential that we could be shutting the power off. However, it's something that we do at a last resort. And the slides, are the slides working, or I guess I don't really need them. It's okay. I mean, we can go through it, but essentially, the next slide and the next one, I think I've gone through a number of this stuff. This is just showing a number of utilities that are using the PSPS, the public safety power shutoff. These are the areas that impact that I was talking about earlier. And then next is some of the phases that we go through. So we're continually in evaluation, where we're looking ahead and looking at the potential weather. Once we get to a point where the levels are high enough, when we feel as though we're going to potentially engage in a public safety power shutoff, then we start notifying folks. And then we continue to monitor, weather changes, 7 days out is not really accurate. You get closer and closer and closer and the accuracy goes up, about 10% each day. And so, we get to a certain point where, we decide that it's very possible we're going to do this. We mobilize, which means in some cases, we're bringing in, line crews and, contractors from out of state, to assist because once we decide that we're going to shut the power off, we have to wait until the weather event subsides. And once the weather event subsides, then we have to patrol every inch of that line or lines that were turned off. And in some cases, it could be 400 or 500 line miles, which could take anywhere from 48 to 72 hours in some case to actually look at it. So we're bringing in helicopters, drones, things of that nature to expedite getting the power back on. Fortunately, in Las Vegas, it was a smaller area and we were able to get the power on within about 3 hours after the winds had subsided below 40 miles an hour, which we felt was a safe time to move forward. Once we get into the mobilization point, we get our crews ready. We are alerting the media. We're alerting, we're keeping in contact with our first responders, with the communities that will be affected. And then we go forth with the de-energization, which could be men in the field actually turning off equipment, or it could be something that we use with our distribution operations center, where they can do it remotely. And then in some cases where the only time that you would ever be affected, the village of Corrales would be if we had a very large, widespread PSPS that included transmission lines that would affect both Corrales and Albuquerque. It's an unlikely situation, but there's always a potential for that depending on what the weather is. And the weather, unfortunately, the climate and the weather is not getting better. For that, it's getting worse. We're in an over 20-year mega drought. And so we're seeing the conditions getting worse and worse and worse. Earlier this year than normal, we started our first public safety power shutoff protocol on February 28th for a wind event that happened on April 6th. And just about every week since then, we've had a protocol going. Each time the weather came down to a level where we felt comfortable, we did use our enhanced settings where we would turn off our reclosures so that if we did have a fault on the main three-phase backbone line, it wouldn't turn back on again. It would stay off so that we would have to go patrol it and take anything off that might cause an ignition. So then obviously, once we get to the point where we are in that turning off phase, that's when we're setting people out in the field to prepare for the patrol. And once we feel the weather subsided, we go ahead and call that, which we did on Thursday. Next slide, please. So this just talks about some of the restoration times. We're talking, in Ruidoso, we have about 180 line miles, but in Silver City, we have close to 900 line miles. And a lot of those miles are cross country and they're very difficult to navigate. You can't get a car or a truck to them. They have to be walked out or flown out. And unfortunately, when we have these large weather events where the winds don't subside, it's very difficult for helicopters to fly properly, at 30 knots. And so they won't be there to assist us. And the same with drones. Drones aren't effective when we still have winds. So we know that here in New Mexico, we have those extended wind events. It's not just a wind one day. It can be windy for weeks on end. But fortunately, the peaks aren't as high. So we don't anticipate being out of power for that long of a period of time. The next slide, please. So one of the things that we've been doing is some customer engagement like we're doing tonight, just to let people know what we're doing, why we're doing it. We are also asking our customers to sign up for outage alerts. We're asking them to follow us on our Facebook page. to register for Life Watch if they have a medical necessity that would require them to have power. It doesn't mean that we're not going to shut the power off. It just means that we're going to make sure, come hell or high water, that we notify that customer of what's coming. So that might even mean going out in the field and knocking on the front door to let them know, hey, look, in 2 days, we're planning on potentially shutting the power off, and you haven't been answering your phone or you haven't been answering your emails. So we're trying our best to get the word out that this is a policy for New Mexico. We really don't expect it. Our fire season is quite long. Obviously, it's, you know, it's all year long, but traditionally it's April 1st to September, or now it's usually into October a little bit. But really, the peak time for us is March, April, and then going into May a little bit. Once we start having some herbaceous growth in the ground, the grasses start to grow, popping, it stunts fire. And so it generally brings our thresholds down a little bit. And so hopefully we're on the tail end of it. We'll see about that, but we are continually monitoring, watching the weather, and making sure that we do everything we can to prevent a wildfire from spreading. Is there any questions?
Councilwoman.
Thank you for coming. It's,
Sure. Thanks for having me.
enlightening. Are you involved also with the power line corridors to clear trees and brush? I think maybe Los Alamos had a problem like that, and some other places.
We do. There's a number of things we do. Back in 2013, the NERC and FERC, National Electric Reliability, I want to say committee, because of a large power outage that shut down portions of the Western grid and multiple brownouts, put in regulations on certain transmission corridors. And so starting in 2013, we started reclaiming our corridors of everything that was over 200 kV and any interconnected lines. So about 2,000 miles of line. As you know, a lot of our lines, come from Farmington, and they come in areas that don't have a lot of vegetation, but then we do cross over, into the Sandia Mountain area, and we do have some in Silver City, where yes, we clear those corridors out to certain specifications. In most cases, it was 150 feet, and then we were looking at trees outside that. We just put together we had an agreement. It took us about 4 or 5 years with the Gila Forest, where we had about 100 miles of distribution lines that were going through the forest, and we were able to expand our right-of-way from 20 feet to 40 feet. Our normal distribution right-of-ways are 10 feet, but in the forest at that time, there were 20 feet. Still not enough. We didn't consider to make it safe. So we were actually clearing out around 20 feet all the way to the ground. And then we're allowing some brush to grow in. So we're using sort of the wire zone, border zone. And then outside of that, they've agreed to allow us to take down anything that we deem a hazard tree that could fall in. So any trees that is showing signs of failure, we can bring that to them and say, hey, we think this is a danger tree. We'd like to top it for habitat or take it down if you like, or whatever it is. So yeah, there's a lot of that going on. Doesn't happen as much in the urban areas, just because the reality is that, people like their trees. I do too. I'm an arborist, so I love trees. This is my 41st year at PNM. I spent the last 31 or 2 in vegetation management. So Corrales has been in my backyard and one of my areas for many decades. So I'm very familiar with Corrales and the issues that we have here as far as just the amount of trees. But that's one of the things that attracts people to Corrales. So the idea that we would clear the corridors in a place like Corrales would be difficult. Not to say we haven't. We do remove a lot of trees, but it's not our attempt isn't to go in and just wipe things out. It's just, it's really to clear the wire zone, to make things safe.
We had that snowstorm in November.
Yeah, we had a number of areas throughout northern New Mexico and Corrales. We had, of course, the North Valley had similar situations where it was it's not, this isn't the first time that's happened, but it was unusual. We were about 2 weeks away. We were about 2 weeks away from losing our tree canopies as far as dropping leaves, trees starting to move their moisture from their crown to their roots. So the crowns of the trees were fully leaved out. And because there's still so much moisture in the tree, they have so much movement and they're not able to take any kind of a tree weight like that or snow weight. And then you have that wet, heavy snow and it comes in and it just busts up trees everywhere. And it certainly points out some of those areas where we need to get some maintenance done. Corrales is one of those areas. Santa Fe, Los Colondrinas was another. The area down there, we had a lot of issues, but anytime you have a sort of a riparian area, we're near the river, you're going to have a lot of trees and a lot of cottonwoods and elms and everything else that are be a continual issue, and we'll be continuing to work on those.
My understanding is that you were scheduled to have a tree maintenance just after that storm hit.
Well, we had done.
I'm just wondering, is that a regular thing you do once a year? Or?
No, it's not once a year. Really, it's condition based. It's not time based. Really, it's not like we're coming out every 3 years. In most parts of the city, there's different parts of the city that would have different sort of time based cycles, right? If you live in the Northeast Heights, in an area where you've got xeriscaping, and so there's not a lot of water getting to the trees, those trees can hold for 6-7 years before we come back and trim them. It's not the case here. And so, or the North Valley or the South Valley, which is where we have most of our tree issues, because we have a lot of trees on ditch banks. We have a lot of volunteer elms that, have just kind of come in and they take over and they grow real fast. I can't remember how, I think it was about 10 years ago, we came through the village and actually used some tree growth regulators along the village road, along the 3-phase that goes along the road here, because we wanted to try to extend the amount of time we had to trim it, because it's so difficult to trim on the road because it upsets traffic. We have to have flagmen. It's dangerous. And so it's not just like any old line. It requires, multiple crews we're spending a lot of resources with traffic and everything else. Then of course, obviously we're upsetting the flow of traffic through the town, which is already congested. Yeah, we base it on what the condition of the lines are. We're looking at our outage records, which we call our worst performing feeders, where we're having our worst tree issues, our worst vegetation issues. And unfortunately, yeah, it got us just in time, because we had spent a number of we had spent a lot of resources going through and pre-planning, going through the village and knocking on doors, putting out door hangers, letting everybody know, hey, we're coming. This is what's going on, giving you what our specifications are, what the trees are going to look like, because we want to make sure people are aware. Because as you can see, if you have a tree that's directly under the power lines, it's not going to look like it did when we came. It's going to look like a big V or an L or whatever letter you want to put in there. But we do use ANSI standards. We use the tree standards that are given to us through the organizations, the ISA, that best care for the trees. Didn't say it makes them look the best, but it best cares for the trees, because we don't want to have failing trees near our power lines. If it's going to be there, we want it to be a live, healthy tree. And so we want to make sure that we don't do anything to damage it to where it's going to die or fall into the lines.
Good. Thank you.
Sure,
Councilman Murray?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, thank you for coming out tonight.
sure.
So where does the responsibility from PNM and customer change in terms of tree maintenance? I mean,
It's a great question. We don't own any trees, PNM. Okay, we own 0 trees, except for the 2 locust trees out in front of our service center, right? So we are trimming based on, like I said, it's condition based and on where, if we're having issues and we're having outages and interruptions, then we're going to focus on that area. It is truly the tree owner's responsibility. However, once a tree gets within 10 feet of a primary voltage power line, of a line clearance certified trimmer is required to trim it. And that's one of those things that's very difficult because the big companies, the Asplins, the Nelsons, we use Davey Tree Surgery right now. We've had Wright Tree Service. We've had a number of different companies. These companies self-certify. They have a large enough company, they're nationwide, in some cases worldwide, where they actually do their own self-certification. And it's unlikely that a smaller tree company, someone that's, they may be a very good arborist, a very good tree worker, but they just don't have the ability to self-certify. And so it's difficult. So where the responsibility lies is when the tree becomes a hazard to us, we go out and remove the hazard, whether that's remove the tree or trim the tree. So that's the best answer I can give you. It's not our tree, but once it becomes a hazard, it becomes something that we have to take care of.
well, I mean, is it responsibility if the line comes off the pole to the house? Is that the
The line from the pole to the house is something that we will disconnect if someone wants to trim. We recognize that the service drop itself is something that if there's a large limb or something that is changing if it's weight or strain on the line, that would be something that we might intervene. But in a lot of cases, you've got some limbs that are just kind of touching it, and it's a covered wire. And so we don't feel that necessarily is something that would lead us to the level of sending a trimmer out to trim it. But if someone insists that they want to have that line cleared, they want to have their trimmer, if they're trimming the trees, we'll come out and we'll disconnect the line for free so they can do that safely if they choose to do so.
do you keep a list of arborists that are certified on your website?
There are no certified arborists. Well, not certified. I take it back. There are no line clearance certified arborists that I know of.
So after the storm in November, who did you hire?
We actually have let me back up. Outside of the vegetation management companies that we hire, I'm not aware of any in town. But we have Davey Tree Surgery. They've been on our property since 2020 now. They were on our property back in 2006, 7, 8, 9 in that area for 4 or 5 years. We go out to bid regularly, and we have a number of these nationwide companies that will bid on. We have local companies that will bid on it too. And as long as they have the certifications and they're able to do the work that we require, then they are able to go through the whole bidding process. And so Davey was the last one here that we awarded, and I believe a new contract's coming up in October of 2026 or 2027. I can't remember exactly which one, but in a year or so, we'll be going back out to bid again for whether it's Davey Tree Surgery or another company. They'll come in and they'll handle it. We have tree trimmers that trim every day. We're trimming trees every day somewhere in New Mexico. We've got multiple crews here. What we call Metro is everything from Valencia County north through Albuquerque, all the way through Corrales, all the way to Algodones, and includes East Mountains. So it's a big stretch of property. That's our Metro crews. Then we also have crews in Northern, which is Santa Fe and Las Vegas, and then of course Southern, which is Alamogordo, Deming, Ruidoso, and Silver City. We also have a transmission crew that we have that does mostly spraying now. Once we went and cleared all of those lines, what our intent was to bring back the seed beds, the natural seed beds. Once we got rid of all the invasives, using, integrated vegetation management, we wanted those dormant seed beds to come back with low growing native shrubs, so that we didn't have these continual, tall growing, fast growing species in those corridors. So we've got crews throughout New Mexico that are continually working. And if we ever have any sort of a power eruption or power interruption, small or large, we're on call 24/7. There will be a tree crew out here. And so most of them are in Metro are located in Albuquerque, right in front of Reeves Power Station, right off El Pueblo there by Paseo del Norte. And so, yeah, it's not far to get to here from there.
So one of the instances in that November storm was the tree limbs came down on a feed across from where I was living, and it caused one of the poles, it looked like to dangerously lean. So how, if a pole had to be replaced, what would the customer be looking at in terms of power outage, for that customer?
Well, that's a good question. They may not be looking at a power outage at all. Depends on what system's on it. If you take a look at what we have out front along Corrales Road, on the east side of the road, you have our backbone system. And after the storm, we cleared our whole backbone system, not just on Corrales Road, but all of the other laterals that came off of it. And we're starting to go through what we call our single phase laterals, where we're stepping down, less customers are on them. They all have protective devices. And so if we have an outage on them, it limits it to anywhere from 2 to 30 people, as opposed to if the backbone system goes down, it could be 2,500 people. And so we cleared the backbone system. So hopefully if we do have any issues with weather, it would affect much less people. But on the other side, I've gotten calls for many decades about the communication trunk lines on the other side of the road, on the west side. And so those ones are just covered in trees. They've got tree limbs all over them. They're pushing them down. But because they're communication cables and essentially as long as they don't break, as long as it doesn't break the trunk line, the utilities, those utilities generally don't feel like there's a whole lot of need to do any trimming. You very rarely see communications folks with tree trimmers unless they're installing new lines.
Well, I mean, this was like a half a dozen customers coming off the feed, coming off Cross Road down my road at Uva. And they were worried because the tree limbs had fallen. They were so big,
Right.
they had caused one of the poles
To pull
just-
out.
Yeah, and there was some concern that they might have
Was-
to turn that back on.
Well, no, my question is, was there a power outage?
Yes.
Okay, so there
Yeah,
was.
this was a November storm.
Okay, so I'm assuming it was maybe a single phase line that it
Probably
hit.
was, yeah.
Yeah, so we've got basically a cutout that separates it from the 3-phase trunk line. So it isolates that line. And obviously, depending on, when we have a storm like that, we're generally going after transmission, 3-phase, single phase, secondary, and services in that order, so that we can get the most people on. And so depending on where you were in there, it would depend on how long it would take to get you back on. And then obviously, we would be handling all of the poles and everything else and, putting the poles back up. We don't expect our customers to do anything like that or.
Yeah, I'm
replace
just
that
curious
stuff.
about how long it takes from, say you
It's-
identify a pole to get the crew out there to replace it and then.
It's hard to say. When a storm like that comes, there's no telling. We did have power out during that storm. We had people out of power for a couple of days.
Yeah.
So that's not unusual in something like that. That's a storm that happens once every, I don't know, half a decade or decade. Normally, If you have a storm that comes through, if it's isolated, we've always got, linemen that are on call. We actually have linemen that work all shifts. So we always have linemen. And then obviously if they need to have, equipment replaced and they need a larger crew, then we always have folks that are on call that'll come out and do it. But, I would expect in a situation like that, I would expect at least a couple of hours, if not 6 or 8 hours,
Okay, thank you.
you know.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank
Anyone
you.
else have questions? John, do you have a question?
No, sir, I do not.
Thank you.
Folks, thanks for your time. Really appreciate it. I've got a vegetation manager. I've got a forester. They're both aware of the issues we've had in the past at Corrales. We're working on it. We do have, this is the area that we're working in. Right now, we're responding to a lot of reactive work and construction work. And so there's going to be crews coming in and then working for a couple of days somewhere else and coming back in. Just ask for your patience and cooperation to get into gates, to put up dogs, things like that, so that we can get done and get out of your hair.
I would ask if you have any suggestions for the community that we can do,
Well, one of
please
the
forward that to us.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. And obviously the main message I would say, do not plant a tall growing tree
Yes.
under a power line.
Yes.
Because it's not gonna look like that picture in the nursery, that beautiful
No.
round tree. It's gonna look that way for a while, but then we're gonna get after it and it's gonna have, like I said, it's gonna have a letter in it, whether it's a V or an L or whatever.
We have learned that lesson.
Yes, unfortunately, but thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Mayor,
Yeah.
could I thank P and M for their swift action when we had a bit of an incident outside of our
Oh,
building
yes,
here?
absolutely.
Yeah, we had a driver go off the road,
Oh.
took down a gazebo, took down a couple of power, and I don't know how long the lines were down, but it wasn't very long.
Our linemen are real good. They're one of the things that we pride ourselves in. I don't mean to take too much more of your time, but one of the things that we had to get over with this public safety power shutoff, sorry, I'd say it so much that it gets turned around in my head, is that we're actually turning the power off. And we spent 100 years doing everything we can to keep the power on and to get power on as quickly as possible. And our line department, they live by that. That is their mission in life, is to keep the power on, is to get the power on, they're just relentless when it comes to that. And so it was one of those things that we had to kind of really take a deep breath and change our culture when we said, okay, guys, we're going to go shut the power off now. And we're doing it for a reason. And so I hope I laid out some of the reasons. And obviously with the fires that we've had in the last few years, Hermit's Peak, and a number of the fires in Ruidoso, it's a serious thing for those communities. And so we just appreciate all your cooperation.
Thank you. Thank you, Dion.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor, Councilors. Thank you both.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd like to mention that. Go look at our website for planting trees, for all that. We have a tree planting brochure that you can download the PDF. It has a list of low growing trees, what we call power line friendly trees that'll do well in the New Mexico climate. And we have information on pruning trees and things of that nature. So we're trying to make sure that we give you you folks the tools that you need to have a great arbor city, because you guys got something really good here.
Thank you. We appreciate that.
Thanks.
Thank you very much for coming.
Okay.
Okay, moving on. Could you do we have a link to PNM on our website?
We can make sure we have one.
So that somebody, if they get interested in that, they can go to it real,
Mhm.
with less trouble.
Yeah, I was talking to Tanya last week about putting up specific information about the PSPS
Good,
stuff.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Okay, Mr. Curry, you are up, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. Tanya, we go to you first.
Thank you, Mayor, Council Administrator Curry. I'm going to start with the PSPS stuff. I spent today in Santa Fe doing a tabletop practice with about 50 other emergency managers, healthcare coalitions. PNM was there, XL Energy was there, discussing public safety power shutoffs. And one of the big things that I kept stressing is we need to get our communities also to be ready, not just with keeping defensible space around their home and keeping trees out from under power lines, at least large growing trees, but to be ready for any time there's an emergency. So, you know, we keep plugging, go look at our first emergency preparedness thing we did. We're going to be doing another one, but having backup generators, knowing how to make sure you have water for your animals and yourself, all very, very important. And we did put some stuff out last week and we'll be continuing to put stuff out. But it's just a very, very important topic for the village of Corrales and to all the citizens. Now we'll go on to my normal. Respiratory illness is still coming down, which is wonderful. New Mexico is at low for respiratory illness. There's only 2 states in the country, which are New Hampshire and I believe Michigan, that have higher or moderate levels of influenza-like illness, which is good. COVID levels and wastewater levels in New Mexico are still moderately or still low. Don't look like they're really climbing, which is wonderful. And that includes RSV is low. There is some new stuff out on RSV. Most people have said, you know, it's 1 shot and you're done. Now that we're getting into people having 3 years of shots, there may be some waning immunity on that. More to come as the studies come out. Measles cases are continuing to rise throughout the United States. We're over 800 cases in the United States. We are now at 65 cases in New Mexico and have added a 4th county. So we have Lee, Eddy, Chaves, and Doña Ana County. All but 6 of those people were unvaccinated. Well, we don't know the vaccination status of 12 still. 6 of them we know had at least 1 dose of vaccine. So that's where I'm going to go out and talk about if you were vaccinated prior to 1990, you probably only had 1 dose of vaccine. It's really simple. You can ask your doctor to run a blood titer to see if you have measles, mumps, and rubella protection as we go through this. If you still have your shot record, you could look. And the reason why I say only 1 dose of vaccine is because until 1989, we thought 1 dose worked. In 1989, there was a large outbreak and we realized that we had the waning immunity and people needed a 2nd dose. As far as COVID vaccines, it looks New Mexico is doing really well. They had about 1,600 people in the last week, age 65 or up, go get another vaccination. And then we're still getting small amounts of other people at younger ages getting those vaccinations. So if you're 6 months out, 65 plus, or with a weakened immune system, you can get a 2nd COVID vaccine for the 25 COVID season. And I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Anyone have any questions? John, you have any questions?
No, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Move right along. Thank you, Tanya. Thank you very much.
Wanted to give just a brief report on some of the work that Sky's been doing. We have 50 new business licenses so far this year, and they are new. And so that's a good thing. And the best thing, as I've mentioned before about that, is that we are monitoring them and collecting them, and helps us in the village in many ways, aside from the permit fees for those are a paltry $35. But it allows us to see what kind of businesses are coming into Corrales or businesses that are operating in Corrales that need a business permit. And so in the same area, the lodger's tax has a balance right now of $31,839.22. And so you'll be hearing some of that as some of the expenditures come before you for expenses that'll be spent on certain things that having to do with areas that the lodger's tax covers. So I have 2 folks that, and this one of them, Steve is a little be the second one here. I'm going to ask him to give an update on Meadowlark after Chief Vic comes up and talks a little bit about some of the staffing issues that he goes through as far as being proactive in the villages, the way he staffs police. And I had this discussion with him. I've had this discussion with him a couple times, but I think it's important to know how the chief goes about making sure that we're proactive in the way that we put his officers in the street at certain times. If you'll notice on your police report, and Vic will probably mention this, area coverage is about 2,200 events every month that he has his officers out there and patrolling. So, Chief.
Thanks, Ron, Mayor and Council. So Ron and I were having a casual conversation, as most of our conversations are, a couple of weeks ago, and the topic came up. The number that jumped out on him for our March monthly report was the self-initiated activity, and in particular the area checks, like he said, which are assigned. We do post extra patrols. Some call them hotspots. Sometimes they're based on citizens' requests, sometimes based on officers' observations. You get a vehicle break-in somewhere, we obviously want to be more visible in that area. But in any event, I'm sure when you look at the monthly activity reports for the police department, you're seeing that 85 to 90% of our activity is generally self-initiated, and the remainder are dispatched. The CFS stands obviously for calls for service. And we'd like to keep it that way, right? Versus having to respond and report like a lot of larger, busier agencies. So we feel that being preventive and proactive can keep it this way and keep it off balance in a good way. So with that being said, for March, we were actually at 94% self-initiated activity. We all know there's no silver bullet to prevent all crime and traffic incidents, at least not in a free society. There's ways to accomplish that when you don't have freedom. But in order to have freedom, there's going to be some crime, there's going to be some traffic, there's going to be some inconveniences. So we do our best to nip that in the bud by being, again, not to sound too redundant, but proactive rather than reactive, and be as visible as possible through those patrols. We pride ourselves on not being top heavy at all. Out of 17 sworn positions, we have 2 administrative officers, or desk jockeys, as I like to call myself, and the lieutenant, and the remaining 15 positions are field officer positions, which includes our 2 sergeants, one of whom also serves as a detective. So we're certainly not over specialized. Everybody wears many hats, and we do many different things. And when it hits the fan, like it does every now and then, we call in the cavalry. We don't have the resources, the helicopters and the SWAT teams and the crime processing teams, but we have a great relationship with all the neighboring agencies in the state, and they come in and help us, and we clean it up, and then we get back to our day-to-day business. We try and deploy our resources as effectively as possible, not just, through the rank structure, but just by making these assignments, putting out the hotspots on at least a weekly basis. If we get a request in the middle of the week, we don't tell the citizen, well, you have to wait till Monday to be added to the list. Charlotte will put that out, right? I remember Councilor Murray's predecessor, Councilor Clauser, about 12 to 15 years ago, screeched into a meeting at about the same time Councilor Burkett did tonight, just on the wire, on the buzzer there. And she made a comment to Chief Vigil and I, as she was walking past us, that you can't throw a baseball around here without hitting a police car. Okay? And while that may not be true, we certainly don't mind that perception being out there. So, we believe the key is high visibility, not a whole lot of downtime. Yes, our officers get breaks like all other employees, but we don't want a lot of idle time. We like them to stay mobile, to be proactive. And then, if you look at the citation report that's included with the monthly, you could see that we're giving about half the people being stopped are getting citations. So people are getting plenty of breaks too. And what's that based on? It's officer discretion. There's no mandate for, okay, if somebody has 0 citations, or if they go in less than 10 under, then they absolutely don't get a ticket. It's up to the individual officer. They're all certified when they get here, and they're all adults over 21 when they get here. So we afford them the ability to exercise that discretion. And every once in a while, we do have a person or two ask for 0 tolerance, and they think they want it until they or their wife or their neighbor get a ticket, and then they say, "Why are you guys so strict?" So it's a lose-lose situations, but we do our best to keep everybody safe, to maintain the balance, and just to be out there. visible and approachable. At the end of the day, I try and take Ben Franklin's advice, right? And watch our pennies and let the dollars take care of themselves. So just the little things day to day. As far as our staffing right now, out of the 17 budgeted positions, we're sitting at 16. So that's a good thing. 6% vacancy rate, nationally, it depends on what study you read. On any given day, it's between 10 and 25%, right? So at 6%, we're doing pretty well. Like I said, knock on wood, and we'll just keep trying to move forward and keep the ranks filled with the, quality, not quantity. Any questions?
Council Murray.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
So last couple of nights, my wife and I, we're always up late, but we think gunshots. And then also there's loud traffic up over on Krause Road. But anyway, how do we, I'm not sure how we can report gunshots because heaven knows where it comes from,
Yeah, pretty close to Albuquerque down there too.
Yeah.
So, Counselor, I would say, not to interrupt you, but
No, that's
if
all
you
right. I'm
yeah.
just looking for
Yeah.
a solution.
I mean,
how we should
if you
report
call our
it.
dispatch and let them know that, well, they should know, but reiterate where you're located and tell them, you don't know if it's Albuquerque, Bernalillo County, Corrales, maybe even Sandia, Pueblo, right? From where you are. I mean, it might be a
Well,
little
it's
more
pretty
faint,
loud,
but-
so it
yeah.
is close.
But if you could just have an officer cruise around the area, and then if there's a unit mobile in the area, then maybe that if it continues, they might be able to pinpoint it. And then if it's outside of our jurisdiction, they could contact Albuquerque or Bernalillo County and have them look further into it. But it couldn't hurt to call our dispatch just so they know about it. And see, maybe we've already got a call on it. Maybe they already know it's Albuquerque, right? But it wouldn't hurt to just call our non-emergency number and let an officer check it out and see if they hear anything.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, sir.
I have
Yeah.
roughly the same question, but about coyotes. I see our coyote log has one sighting in March,
Yes, sir.
which I am probably more guilty than most people of not reporting because I see at least once every day, probably multiple times a day. How useful is that information to you guys? I mean,
Yeah.
do you really want everybody calling in every time they see a coyote, or if they just see a coyote that they think is problematic, or what would be your desire as far as people reporting coyote spottings?
You don't ask him that question.
Right. One
That's a-
report a month.
Counselor Burkett, Mayor, Council, that's a whole other meeting, but in any event, I don't actually see the need to call in every coyote. They're part of the environment around here. It's like calling in every rabbit, squirrel, snake. But yeah, as you said, for a problematic coyote, if you see coyote appears to be stalking you, family member, pet, something like that, attacking somebody's chickens or livestock or something like that. Absolutely. This way our animal services officers can go give some tips and maybe help the folks with some remedies and, add them to the log and see if we have any patterns. From the previous few months where we did have more activity than the one call, it was pretty sporadic. There wasn't, any concentrated area. They're village-wide, they're actually statewide and obviously nationwide. So, they do what they can as far as assisting the public, but are certainly not assuming a lead role in coyote management. Well, I shouldn't put it that way. They'll certainly assist citizens with coyote management plan tips, but just knowing that a coyote is present it doesn't really serve any purpose, if that answers your question. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Any more? John, you have a question for the chief?
No, just a general thanks to putting out the speed trailers associated with the construction project that Steve's going to fill us in on, but I appreciate those efforts, Chief.
Welcome, Counselor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Chief. So now that the fun and constructive work has begun on Meadowlark, both upper and lower, and a pipe down at the bottom of the upper part, Steve has been busy. He had an opening construction meeting with Albuquerque Asphalt on Monday morning at 9 o'clock. And we fielded a few, but not that many, I don't think, calls about the road closure. And so they're working their way through that with, I got 2 calls that I passed on to you today, Steve. And one thing that we've emphasized to people that we've gotten some requests for hall passes if you don't live on Meadowlark, we've gotten some requests for that. And one of the points that Commander Latin has made was that even our fire department, we have several members of that group that live in Rio Rancho. They cannot come down Meadowlark either unless there's a siren call that we have to answer to. So we know it's an inconvenience, but we appreciate everybody's patience. It's the beginning of the end of the project that has 20 years worth of fingerprints on it. And so I'll let Steve give an update as to where we're at and where we're looking at going forward.
Mayor, councilors, Administrator Curry. We had the pre-con on Friday. We started Monday morning. Or Albuquerque Asphalt started cutting the north side, and they've got that cut and started removing some asphalt, and they're starting on the south side now. We're gonna meet again tomorrow morning. We have another meeting at 9 to discuss some of the traffic problems that we're having. And thank you, Vic, for having officers out there. But we're trying to close it to through traffic, but there is still quite a bit of traffic running back and forth. So I'm gonna propose maybe trying to get a flag man top and bottom. And then we talked about maybe putting some kind of pass on people's cars that live there so that they can come in and out. But we still have to let deliveries through, and any lawn care or anybody else that has anything to do. They're gonna try and put down some curb on Thursday. And I think by the end of the week, early next, we'll get a better idea how long this is gonna take. But I do think having that road closed to through traffic is gonna make a big difference, because each lane is 10 foot wide, and that curb machine is over 12 foot by itself. So once that starts, if people are continually coming back and forth, that's definitely gonna cause a problem.
Councilor Murray.
Thank you. So are you closing it at the village limits? Is that correct?
We have it closed at Corrales, at Loma Larga and Meadowlark. And then Rio Rancho has it closed at Sarah and Meadowlark.
Okay.
And then we called and got it closed, like a smaller set of barricades up at the village limits towards Rio Rancho, because they were starting to cut through and come around. That seemed to help, but there's still quite a few people that are coming through there.
So how about, is there a way we can get an article in the Rio Rancho paper or something, maybe to tell them that?
I'm not sure. It's on their website, and I don't know if there's a way to get it in their paper, to be honest with you. I could check and see, but I don't know.
Okay. No, I was just curious about if it was closed off at Sarah and Meadowlark, because that would seem to make sense, because then you don't have to worry about turnaround.
Yeah.
Down by the village limits, which is
What
pretty
they're
tight.
what they were doing is cutting through the cemetery parking lot. Yeah. So, I mean, it's kind of hard. And then, Vic was explaining he can't go past Corrales. So once they go to that spot, so that's why we set up that at the end of Corrales. That way they can gauge who goes all the way through and who's actually lives off of Meadowlark.
They're trying to raise the dead or what,
that I don't know.
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay.
Steve, you want to talk just a little bit about the accessory fund that we're going to have on Loma Larga?
I'm sorry?
Oh, the accessory work on Loma Larga.
Yeah, accessory work on Loma Larga. That's the top of the page of our website.
Oh, okay. The drainage?
No, the seal coating and crack sealing.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, starting the 28th of this month, we're going to seal coat Loma Larga. We started crack sealing, I believe it was September, but then the weather got too cold to fog seal. So they had already set up, Sunland had already set up April 28th to start. So what they'll do is they said it'll take about 4 days. They're gonna come through, and they're gonna have pilot cars. I don't know which side of Loma Larga they're gonna start on, but they're gonna just seal coat one lane at a time as they go through. It had to be roughly 50 degrees and rising for 5 days in order to put that down. So it was something that we really couldn't control, and it has to be completed, inspected, and paid for by June. So there's really, I know it's not a good time, but I don't know if there's gonna be a good time.
Yes, sir.
So, other question, how long of a distance are they going to shut off or have the pilot cars on? They're going to do 1 or 2 miles at a time, or?
When they crack sealed it, they did about a mile at a time,
Okay.
between 3/4 and 1 mile at a time. I would assume they would do the same, but they did not say.
And how are we going to work, the roads that are coming off of the, west side where there is no access other than Loma Larga? Once they lay the, seal coat down, how long does it take to dry to make it drivable?
To make it drivable, I believe it takes roughly 30 minutes. But in order for it to really set into the asphalt, it'll take a couple days, but you can drive over it fairly fast.
Okay, so it's not gonna be a problem for residents who live west of Loma Larga
No.
that have access or anything like that?
No, it
Okay.
should not be.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Just want to make sure I understand the closures. Are they just going to be when there's active work happening on the weekends? Is it going to open back up? Because I know we do have a variety of village events happening over the next 3 or 4 weekends, or will it be closed off at those points in time as well?
It'll be closed off as well, because they'll have concrete that needs to cure. They'll have asphalt that's been cut that can't be driven on
Okay.
to,
And how are we going to manage that without the ability to have flag people and stuff there when they don't have crews on site? I mean, it seems like it's going to be largely the honor system, and that does not seem to be a system that works very well these days.
no, that system is not working very well these days. I'll find out more after our meeting tomorrow, because traffic control is definitely going to come up. They've been pretty good about flagging off the areas that they're working on so that nobody can drive on them. But I'll get a better idea of what they have in mind tomorrow.
Okay. Steve, I guess we're good. Thank you.
You know, it's building roads, even whether it's a mile or 100 miles, is so dependent upon the weather. It's dependent upon delivery of asphalt, and so much of it is staging. And if you may remember that we had this opportunity come up because we anticipated having the road be closed and being worked on in the June, July, August timeframe. And when Albuquerque Asphalt had a window come open, we thought we would take advantage of it rather than pushing it into the summertime. So that's why it's all happening now. And I personally, and I know the mayor feels the same way, is that we just want to get this project done and put to bed. It's not just a matter of getting it done and put to bed, but it's also a matter of helping to sustain the road that's up there by putting the curbing in and getting the trailways put up on either side of the road.
It was also an issue of funds too.
Yeah.
Funds were going to go away.
Yeah, Mr. Curry, is there any other seal coat projects that would be done in the village in the near future or in the?
Not that I'm.
Not,
aware
yeah,
of.
not that I'm aware.
Steve
of.
hasn't mentioned it.
Yeah.
Steve, did you want to make a comment?
Sorry, I didn't mean.
Mayor, councilors, Administrator Curry, no, there's no other seal coat projects going on. We don't have anything else, but like Administrator Ron said, a lot of these funds expire in June, some more towards the end of June, but a lot of these expire in June. So that's why all these projects came to a head all at once.
Are we in danger of losing any funds?
Not as of right
Not
now,
now.
we are not.
Okay,
Not now.
thank you.
That's why we were quick to jump on it when they said, hey, we can go in April. We said, okay.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, two other quick things. Again, the update on the LGIP, we have $4,009,521.36. And the last thing I want to mention is something that the mayor mentioned early on was today is Earth Day. It's 55 years old. And it's really an interesting story if you delve into it. And one of the people that started it politically in the United States was a guy named Senator Gaylord Nelson from the state of Wisconsin. And his thing was to try to do teach-ins. For those of you who can remember that term back in the day, And he called all the universities that he could, including the University of New Mexico, to try to get the student leaders and the people involved in Earth Day back 55 years ago. And another one of the interesting things that helped kick off Earth Day was the support of the United Auto Workers Union, Walter Reuther at the time, again, testing some of the minds of some of the folks that are close to my age. But it's something that is still celebrated, it's expanded worldwide. You know, we have Earth Week, as the mayor mentioned, and it has been controversial at times. It's been not controversial. It's expanded across the world. And it's just something that is a commemoration of what we all can do to preserve where we live and make it more sustainable. So I just wanted to say happy birthday to Earth Day, 55 years old. Thank you.
You do?
Mayor.
Yes, sir.
Good. Ron, perhaps you can give us an update. But despite Councilor Mier's best efforts in Santa Fe this year, we heard from our legislative update in the town hall, we're still having a serious problem with the county assessor. And I was wondering if we might invite her to the next meeting or the meeting after and have her explain her position and why she feels that way. It's affecting a lot of farmers and a lot of people in this community. And I think it might be very helpful to have the county assessor.
You know, she was here, right?
She was here, but I think the issues were not as clear at the time. I think they are now.
We can certainly. And her whole team is offered, in fact, they did come. Her whole team did come.
Yeah.
And we're available for conversation. Okay, sure.
And the other question is, any update with Pueblos India?
No. They have not, according to Jason Kasuga, they have not countered the MRGCD's offer. So it's still, the ball is in their court.
Okay, thank you.
Was there a time limit on that one?
On
the offer?
I think no, I don't think Jason put a time limit on it. I think he wanted them to think about it. Well, I shouldn't say that. I shouldn't speak for him because I don't know the answer to that for sure. But given the slowness of their response and the fact that they have to take this through their whole, whatever they call their group of leaders, their elders, I can't remember what it's called, their tribal elders. And they spend a long time discussing all these things, you know, going through it. So it's not something you're going to decide in one evening.
And on the previous point,
Which one?
we was talking about having the assessor coming over. You know, I'm glad we had a discussion on that that day. But I think what's the plan is going to have to be an interim committee. And the interim committee start up here real soon. And so it's going to have to be an interim committee, probably should be an interim committee bill that tries to come out and see if we can get the governor put on her agenda. It's that important. I think the people here in Corrales understand that one. We're a little bit unique because, you know, well, we have the siphon pump, others don't have that one, but things are moving quickly on that one. So I think the reason I would agree with him having her come down, it's not so much put her on the spot, as much to see how much cooperation we can get prior to the interim committee. Would hate to have that one happen at the interim committee and we find all these things out. Rather have it happen here, somewhere else, but other than an interim committee, because we really want them to support it.
Yeah, it's going to take legislative action.
Yes, sir. And
We just can't do it on our own and she can't either.
No, and I think we talked about this before, so I won't, you know, belabor the point. But, you know, when we got to that point, everybody on the committee understood it and they said, this is a tax and rev issue. And it is. I mean, it's all about taxes, it's all about money, and it's all about everything else. So then you move it to the tax and revenue, took it out of that particular committee. You know, two different committees on that one, you know, it's a stretch. So we're going to have to see who wants to pick that bill up. The tax and rev committee, first time it goes out or second time it goes out, and we get it through one committee and then over to the tax and rev. But I think that's what's really most important, not necessarily going over to appropriations.
Yeah, I think this is a little more than tax and revenue. This is climate change. This is an issue
This is
an issue that is impacting the entire state, although maybe not in this specific way as it's impacting us here in the village because of other circumstances, you know, that are surrounding it. And I think the whole issue is, as we've talked to Jason Kasuga at MRGCD, the whole issue of delivering water to the farmers and to the agricultural community is going to have to change, not just, and it may be in our case sooner than later because our siphon went out. But it's just going to have to change because the issue is that we don't have much water here. Water is elsewhere. Everybody's got, we have the same amount of water in the world that we ever had. It's just that it's not here. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, Mayor, you said that has to be a legislative action, that she doesn't have the power to do it. It seems to me that she's pretty unique in the state. When the councilor talks to people in Albuquerque and elsewhere, they don't want to touch it because it's not our problem, it's your problem, and it's her problem. And it's a problem we have with her. And I think that she can make those decisions on her own in terms of assessment and in terms of how she judges farmland, in terms of taxing.
Okay,
So,
well, we can certainly ask her and see if she can come sometime. Melanie, put that on one of your Post-it notes, please.
thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're gonna move
Mayor,
on.
Mayor,
Oh,
this is
yeah.
John. I just have a question. It may be for the administrator, it might be for the village attorney, just regarding the lodgers tax fund. So we see that growing and growing, and we don't come anywhere near spending, or well, it's not us, but we don't come near authorizing any requests that come close to what's in there, and it looks like it's just going to keep growing. Is the lodger tax rate set by the state, or is that a percentage that we set?
It's set by the state, Counselor. And we through the work that Sky's doing and we've got some new members on the Lodger Tax Board, and we're encouraging them to look at things that we ask them to spend it on.
Okay, thank you, because
Rather
it
than just
really.
collecting, just having it pile up in the bank.
Yeah, I think-
Exactly,
think there are a
exactly.
couple of
Introduce it.
I think there are a couple of things on this agenda that are going to utilize lodger's tax.
Yeah, there are. I noticed that, and that's what got me thinking about it. Even with the requests that are on there, it's going to take a small bite out of it, but there's a lot left. So, okay, thank you for that.
And we are encouraging anybody that submits an event form to the village, we're encouraging them to put in requests to the Lodgers Tax Board. I just talked to Maureen Cook today for the Dave's Fun Run in September, and told her she could submit a request for that. So, and we can also use it for some capital outlay or capital building projects if it's related to any kind of tourism activity. So when we get to working on the information center at the old bank, we might be able to use some of those funds. You can only use 50% of what you have in the fund, but you can use some of that money towards things like that.
Or perhaps we could use it for a little shoulder enhancement to allow for people to walk from place to place.
I don't think that would
Oh,
count.
you don't think
but-
that'd qualify?
How about the sign? Can we get it down?
Well, there's
Oh,
signs.
we actually,
We do need to do.
we
some signs.
did contract with Fast Signs from Rio Rancho, and they actually didn't take down the Wells Fargo sign. We believe Wells Fargo did that, but we have a new sign going up in the next couple of weeks.
Electronic?
No, it's not going to be an electronic sign. The electronic signs are $40,000. So it's just going to be a regular sign that's under 7,000.
Does that mean, you're just gonna like the old analog style lettering?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. It's going to follow all of our ordinances for signs.
Yeah, we didn't want to have any excessive light. I thought about neon signs.
No.
I was told no, that wasn't allowed. Okay, Corleone's Farm. This section is for informational purposes only, not for discussion and debate, to inform the governing body of an issue or a concern that would not be addressed on the agenda during the business session. There will be a 3-minute time limit for each speaker. Do you have a list?
I sure do. We're going to start with Zoom participation tonight. And we have Ricardo Blanco. Ricardo, make sure you unmute yourself, state your name and address for the record, and you will have 3 minutes.
Okay, can everyone hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, great. Ricardo Blanco, our farm is at 4160 Corrales Road. Good evening, distinguished Corraleños. I have written you and come before you several times to discuss the oldest families of Corrales, the descendant families. Unfortunately, sometimes I am not sure my message about descendants and issues impacting them are heard or considered. What I hadn't realized is that I was facing an attitude, an opinion in perhaps some Corrales leadership, PNZ, and community members, that exceptions could not be made for just the descendants when considering ordinances, it seems, planning as well. For example, the New York Comp Plan final version mentions descendants more and has a more historical consideration approach to planning. However, it does not explicitly mention how the oldest families have been the stakeholders ignored and not considered, a statement that is essential for understanding why consideration should be made. A direct statement on considering descendants during stages of planning, using cultural impact studies, establishing guardrails, etc., is also essential but lacking. A more specific problem that I mentioned earlier of refusing to make considerations for descendants, but instead giving those considerations to all surfaces in the new version in value 3-2. This again is very likely due to some in the administration, PNZ, and maybe some comp plan committee members' opinion that ordinances and recommendations cannot be made to address certain groups, but must be more inclusive. Kind of an extension of the let's not rock the boat, remain neutral, harmony myth that inhibits deeper discussion and action in Corrales. Because of this, I feel the entire descendants value should be drafted for the plan to specifically discuss issues and propose goals to address them. This comp plan is likely the only master planning that will be done in Corrales in the next 10 years. We must get it right for the descendants who will may not make it in this community that long. The time for honesty and consideration of descendants' families is now. The snows of January already passed, and the flowers of May will soon be here. Let's not relegate the descendants to another state of that ignored stakeholder. Step forward, speak up for and defend the descendants of our founding families of our village. Let's find a solution to help descendants remain, folks who make up less than 20% of the population of Corrales. For Corrales is more than just a hometown to our oldest families. Thank you.
Thank you, Ricardo.
Thank you.
All right, up next is Sheila Fox. Sheila, if you'll come to the podium, state your name and address for the record. You will have 3 minutes.
Sheila Fox, 105 Milagros. Thank you for hearing me, Mayor and council members and everyone here. It's nice to have a platform to be heard. I'm very grateful for the fire hydrants that have been installed across from my house. I live on a ditch and I live by the Corrales Elementary School, which is now under construction for the middle school. And it's great to I feel safer now that there's those fire hydrants, but I also feel more dust in my sinuses and so do my neighbors. The fire hydrants resulted in losing a berm and some natural plant life. So it's this very large area of just flat dirt. I heard, a neighbor heard that there will be mulch laid there, but then I called to find that out when that was happening. And they said, oh, probably not until the beautification of the interior ditch, or maybe when the rest of the fire hydrants were being put in. So I hope that that is not the case. I hope that there can be some mulch put there for the health of my neighbors and myself. So I would appreciate that, and we'll see what happens if you can manage that. And then I just wanted to give a heads up. I know that in June, the noise ordinance is being reviewed. I have many neighbors with large lawns, and I hear a lot of motors a lot of the time. And there are quite a few of the gas-powered leaf blowers, which I found out a half hour's worth of that is emits 23 times more carbon in the air than a Ford Ranger driving for 16 hours. The noise levels range from 80 to 105 dB, which is the same level as a passenger jet taking off. And they have lots of people using them really suffer from hearing damage. And the gas-powered ones, they penetrate the walls. I wear my headphones a lot in my house. And when I want to eat outside, I can't sometimes because it's so loud, and I can actually smell sometimes the fumes. So thank you for hearing me. We could consider electric-powered leaf blowers if you must, though raking really works well.
Okay, up next is Ken Martinez. Ken, if you'll come to the podium and state your name and address for the record, you too will have 3 minutes.
Go. I'm Ken Martinez, 401 Chimaha Road. Mayor, councilors, administrator. My grandfather's grandparents were from Corrales. They lived here quite a while ago in the mid 1800s. I still feel their presence here today. On their behalf, I ask you to listen to the current descendants of the village founders. Since those early days of village incorporation and the tenures of Mayor Barbara Tenorio Christensen, councilors Horacio Martinez, Richard Perea, Dulcelina Curtis, and Cliff Pedroncelli, the descendants and Hispanic families that used to make up 80% of the village now make up only 20% and have been in the shadows. Not feeling part of the village they helped found and sustain. Their histories and contributions have been obscured as the village has grown. They have felt marginalized and have been displaced for a wide variety of reasons that we won't get into right now. In essence, they become invisible, even though they made up the great majority of the original village residents and the original village governance. What, if anything, can be done about that? The 10-year comprehensive plan can be the vehicle to welcome and help reinvigorate the inclusion of descendant and Hispanic families in the implementation of the plan. The Comprehensive Plan Committee has done an admirable job of including all the stakeholders, including the descendants. And we thank you for doing that. While much was shared about what descendants considered to be important at those meetings, there was so much to be done about it to make it a reality, because the devil is in the details. First, we need a planning process, much like our ancestors had. In Spanish, it is called convivencia. Convivir is the root word. It means living together in a community, knowing how to listen to one another, learning to communicate effectively with one another, accepting differences, and having the ability to recognize, respect, and appreciate others, as well as living peacefully in a united community. Convivencia is the method by which to accomplish this. More specifically, I recommend a convivencia planning department that uses this method of listening to one another, deliberating, and working out differences to arrive at solutions. That is, being able to assemble it. Okay. Well, in summary, I skipped a paragraph. In summary, please listen to and heed the descendants and Hispanic families' voices that in recent decades have not been included or heard. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken.
Okay. Next is Sabine Schurter. Sabine, if you'll come to the podium, state your name and address for the record, you'll have 3 minutes.
Good evening, councilors, mayor, administrator. My name is Sabine Schurter. I live on 47 Rincon Road. I'm relatively new to Corrales. I lived here for a few years in the early 1990s, then moved to the Jemez. We often visited my sister-in-law in the Corrales family home and had our horses at her place in the winter. Finally, we bought a house here in 2019 to be closer to family. Since then, I've found many new friends in the village. Some are descendants of old families who have been here for hundreds of years, and others have lived here for decades. What unites us is the love for our still rural village, rooted in tradition and history, our sense of community, enjoying nature, and the respect and love for animal husbandry and working the land. Many descendants of the old families are the heart and soul of the community. Some of the old family homes and farmhouses have been turned into businesses, but quite a few Coraleños are still living in the heart of the village, some still in their ancestral homes. Corrales does not have an industrial or exclusively commercial zone. Corrales is not a city like Rio Rancho or Albuquerque. Pretty much every business in the village has residential neighbors. While some businesses are wonderful and respectful neighbors and community members, others are not. They just do as they please with little consideration for their neighbors. I would like to ask our village administration to not encourage and accept disturbing, disrespectful, and intimidating behavior for whatever reason. I hope that the comprehensive plan proposal for an expert master plan for the narrow strip along Corrales Road, also called the Mixed-Use Neighborhood Commercial District, will come to pass and that the plan will respect the people who live near and in the district. I hope that future ordinances will recognize and respect every resident's right to the same high level of quality of life in the village. Please refrain from creating sacrificial village zones where residents are expected to live with much higher levels of environmental degradation. People came here hundreds of years ago to eke out a living and to create the village we now all enjoy and love. Please respect, preserve, and protect all of our village. Thank you.
Okay, next is Fred Hashimoto. Fred, if you'll come to the podium, state your name and address for the record. You'll have 3 minutes.
Hi, I'm Fred Hashimoto. I live at 485 East La Entrada. I certainly respect the descendants. When I moved here 50 years ago, they comprise a huge proportion of the village population, and that's diminished. Also, please consider deleting transferable development rights in the recommendation 3-1.3 on page 56 of the final version of the comp plan. TDR should be deleted because, one, very few people in the village have any idea what they are all about. Two, it is touted as preserving open space and farmland, but that is not what it would be used for in Corrales. Landowners wanting to do that can just not develop their land or participate in the conservation easement program. For example, in that program not too long ago, the Haslams gained almost $1 million and also tax benefits for their 13 acres. 3, in Corrales, TDR would be a tool for developers to build multiple dwellings on smaller lots and have higher density housing, quote, throughout the village, unquote. That would be inappropriate and unpopular. An example in Corrales would be that if a developer owned or bought 20 acres in the Sandhills and also owned 5 acres in the main part of the village and wanted to increase dwelling density on the 5 acres by transferring those rights from the 20 acres to the 5 acres one. That would be a significant increase in building density. Or perhaps one of your neighbors owns 5 acres in the Sandhills or wherever in the far reaches of the village. He decides to transfer 2 housing development rights from his 5 acres to be able to build 2 new dwellings on his 1 acre next to you. How would you feel about that? Obviously, that scenario or any similar ones should not happen in Corrales. The recommendation states, quote, throughout the village, unquote. Really? If there isn't a right, there's nothing to transfer. Building on steep slopes above 15 degrees, 15%, or arroyo lands within the prudent line have no building rights. Implementing and managing the TDR program can be complex, requiring clear regulations, meticulous planning, and ongoing administration. So please delete mention of transferable development rights because such a developer's tool to increase housing density has no place in our village's comprehensive plan. Thank you.
Next is Salome Ward. You'll come to the podium, state your name and address for the record. You will have 3 minutes.
Hi, Salome Ward, 204 East Meadowlark Lane. First, I just want to say I so enjoyed hearing the comments of Ricardo Blanco and Ken Martinez about the descendant families. I love hearing those stories of the history, and I hope that you're being heard. And I just want to say, viva la convivencia! What a wonderful concept. So another thing I just wanted to mention is I know that most of you have spoken about the importance of words, and especially in regard to developing or changing ordinances. Like recently, there was a kind of entertaining back and forth from Councilman Burkett, worried about the future development of car washes on village-owned properties, that kind of thing. And also, Councilman Brooke spoke so eloquently about the use of words when we're referring to guidelines for village planning with regards particularly to the ACD. So other words that I'm worried about right now are also in the comp plan, and it's regarding, yes, these transfer of development rights, which I didn't see it at first. So I just wanted to say, please, please, please look at that. And I was trying to do some research on it. I kind of feel like the more I researched it, the more confused I became. But essentially, it's the transferring of rights from one property to another. So in a place like Corrales, it makes me wonder. So it's development rights, but is it also water rights? Is it, I just feel like there's a potential here for a lot of different kinds of things to happen. It's also very complex. I mean, I found a fact sheet that belonged to a different municipality in a different part of the country, but it involves, the sending zones, the receiving zones, medium of exchange. They're very complex type of mechanisms. And like I said, I feel like there's a potential to have a real Pandora's box open up. I mean, one of the tools that is used in establishing TDRs and operating them is establishing a TDR bank, which could then act as an intermediary, purchase the property rights, hold them, or eventually sell them at their own leisure in the future. So I don't know. I just see this and say, please pay attention to the words, and please, please look at that, because I don't feel like it's the right solution for Corrales. It very much seems to be an access point for high density and cluster development, which is contrary to the goals and the wishes of the majority of respondents to the comp plan survey. We should focus on and facilitate other preservation tools that don't come at such a cost to our quality of life and rural lifestyle, including it presents severe risks to our already limited water supply and costly sewer lines that allow our precious groundwater to be processed and absorbed into neighboring municipalities is not an answer. And I also just want to say yay for Earth Day. Please, I was hoping to say something about the mosquito spraying. It's very poisonous. It kills beneficial insects. And I'm hoping that somehow we can educate the public about the risks and consider alternatives and better, safer risk mosquito management. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor and council, I just want to let you know, Councilor Ossobrook did have to drop off the Zoom, but we still have a quorum for later when we vote on the remaining items on the agenda. Okay, up next, Mr. Bill Perkins. If you'll come to the podium, state your name and address for the record, you'll have 3 minutes.
Later, rival.
Thank you, Melanie. My name is Bill Perkins.
You can keep going. They can't hear it on the Zoom anyway.
And I live at 5768 Corrales Road, Mayor, councilors, and administrator. The highway that has long served access through this farming village is poorly suited to meet the complex needs of the now bustling commercial activity at the heart of our community. Horses and tractors are being replaced by trucks, bicycles, local and commuter traffic, and now more and more pedestrians. And observing that several of the larger businesses in this district are drinking establishments the shortcomings of the old farm roads become even more apparent. Traffic accidents are inevitable. They always have been. But now we can all see that the vehicular incidents taking place will occur in the context of our awareness that there is a stark incompatibility between the farm roads and the bustling commerce. It would be nice to imagine that the charm of the old roads and the historic architecture could temper the driving habits of locals and visitors alike. Alas, it doesn't work that way. When there are injuries, and of course there will be, when there are injuries, and of course there will be powerful advocacy to take action. And some will demand immediate change to bring the road up to the applicable urban standards. Some will appeal for walkability and for preserving historic character and charm. And we will, of course, be confronted with the questions over who will decide and who will decide which measures to undertake, and then who will pay for the changes. Some will argue that the state should pay for it, and others may say, oh, the businesses should shoulder this burden. And some will offer that Corrales is an affluent community, so will we rise to the challenge, or will we squander our remarkable gifts? Or will we plan wisely for the coming changes? Thank you.
Okay, up next, Teresa Lopez. Teresa, if you'll come to the podium, state your name and address for the record. You'll have 3 minutes.
Hi, Teresa Lopez, Rupert's Lane. I'm here speaking up, as was said in one of your quotes from the Lutheran pastor. These are my words. Some of the words that were spoken in the council meeting on April 8th were not just the speaker's words, but they were words that were publicly quoted from you, the mayor of Corrales. Those words, quotes, have been in the Corrales comment, your mayor's message, and also in the Sandoval County signpost. They've been printed, quoted, that a relatively small local group believed that the ACD would harm our community, and at other times don't understand and are confused. First and foremost, the Corraleños, your constituents, are not stupid or confused. We know and understand and hear and see a lot of things that are going on in the village. We have and can have a different way of viewing and thinking about things. I feel that your words are very condescending and show zero respect to your constituents in the village. It's not okay for you to call them out with your public words. The people that took the survey and signed the petition, which were many to want to keep Corrales rural, as the comp plan poster says. We Corraleños are not against everything, but some things we just feel that are not right for our village. It's our querencia. We also have a voice. Again, I ask, what are the real reasons that you moved here for? I hope it wasn't to change Corrales to what you just left. Some of us have lived here our entire lives, many older than me, and that are descendant families. Some just moved here because they liked what they saw and felt here. We always have had art, 4-H, and such. The things are still here that if you really want it. It can be a wonderful, simple village of life. I mean, simple life here in the village. We don't want bigger, more money, money. The not so small vocal group and a lot of the village voices apparently were heard by the counselors that listened. Words written and said can mean a lot and can be used to change things, just like the last council meeting about the land. You all needed to get those words correct towards the end of the meeting. It was all about wording. Angela's quoted words were, will not immediately bring significant change. Well, when and how much? At some point, it could be utilized. When and how? Not going to change dramatically? Well, how much then? Isn't going to immediately institute a massive change? Again, how much? Bottom line is, how much? Some Corraleños don't want the changes to open a door that can't be closed tomorrow or in the years to come. You quoted also, Mayor, it was the desire it was made to the desire to provide value. What, more money? Corrales doesn't need more money. Greater quality of life? For who? I ask you, for who? Greater quality of life. I think all of us here in this room love our life here in the village as it is, and we don't want any more changes.
Okay.
So now we'll move on to Councilors Forum. This section is for informational purposes only, not for discussion and debate, to inform the governing body of an issue or concern that would not be addressed on the agenda during the business session. A council member may respond to an issue or a concern brought up by a resident in the preceding Coriolanus forum, but to remain in compliance with the Open Meetings Act, the subject will not be up for debate or discussion. Who would like to start? Councilor Murray.
Thank you, Mayor. So this kind of comes back to the couple of comments made by the Coriolanus. And there's no disrespect about this, but it has to do with the descendants. And in my mind, I'm trying to figure out, how do we determine who's a descendant of this village? I mean, at what point, or do we have a cutoff and say that they are now descendants of this village? I mean, this is no respect. I understand the basic families that have lived here, and I've read Mary's book on Corrales history. And yeah, there's no arguments. Those that came in the 40s and 50s, you know, they're probably considered. But at some point, 50 years from now, I might be considered a descendant. I don't know. You know, so I'm just kind of curious. How do we determine who is a descendant? And this is no disrespect to the people who have spoke.
Councilor Alsterbrook? Oh, he's gone. That's right. 8 o'clock. Okay. Anyone else have any comments? Okay. So we'll move on to the consent agenda. Now, I think you have a form that Jolene gave you, a sheet of paper that Jolene gave you regarding the budget adjustment resolution, so that you can take a quick peek at that if you haven't had an opportunity yet. And then I would certainly entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. How do you vote, Councilor Murray?
Oh, me?
Yeah.
Oh,
I think, aren't you
yes.
Murray?
Yeah, well, sometimes I am.
Okay.
I answered a lot of names.
Okay. Councilor Burkett?
Yes.
Councilor Woolman?
Aye.
Councilor Mira?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. All right, let's move on to new business. Consideration action approval of resolution 25-12, publish and post notification of hearing for ordinance 25-01, which has to do with municipal lot size. Can I get a motion to approve, publish and post of resolution 25-12?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any discussion?
Just for the people that are in the audience that probably don't know what's going, just that we're gonna put this and we're gonna be discussing it later.
You can talk about it right now.
No, but I mean, that's.
But we will discuss it again in about a month, isn't it? 4 weeks?
Right.
No, it'll be May 13th. So
May
we have
13th.
3 weeks between this meeting and the May 13th
Because we had an
meeting.
extra, yeah, okay.
So normally we have to
It'll
give
be
2 weeks.
discussed again.
Yes, sir.
So,
Yes,
Mayor,
sir.
So my understanding is it's just a lot of the language we talked about last time has been removed, and it's just a simple
Yes, sir.
village will be owned by the property.
Yes, sir. And this came up because someone wants to get rid of a piece of land that they consider a liability. We need it for access, and we need it to clear parts of the bosque that are non-native and hazardous. And so we will have to replat the lot, and we'll also have to get an appraisal. And then we would buy a substandard lot. It would stay that way. It would not be used for anything other than access for fire suppression and actually parking. People want to go down to the bosque and walk around, they can park there.
Okay, so that does answer the question that no building of any kind will.
No building of any kind will go on it
Okay, very good. Thank you.
because it's a substandard lot. And we have all, although I didn't get a chance to vote, we have all voted to make sure that lots are standard size, 1 acre, before you can put a dwelling on them.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yes, sir. Anybody else? Okay. How do you vote, Councilor Miera?
Yes, sir.
Councilor Woolman?
Aye.
Councilor Burkett?
Aye.
And Councilor Murray?
I'm here. Yes.
Okay. But you're going to vote for it too?
Yes,
right?
I am.
Publish and post, yeah. So now, have you had a chance to look over the old ICIP and make some changes, ask some questions, whatever you? Who wants to open the discussion? Council Burkett.
I have hopefully an easy question. Dispatch center, the $15 million roughly, is that our anticipated share of the dispatch center?
No, but we've been asked by the county, all entities involved in it were asked to put that on number one. Now, I haven't heard any different yet, and I haven't talked to Wayne Johnson yet. But that's so that we can get the money for the, what's now called a different thing, but it's basically the 911 system, emergency call center.
Okay.
And that will probably not be number one unless it's absolutely necessary to get that last bit of money. It's basically going to start, July 1st.
So 15 million would be the total anticipated
For
cost.
everybody.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how many municipalities / counties are we splitting that amongst?
5 or 6.
Yeah, Sandoval County, us,
Bernalillo,
Bernalillo,
Cuba. Is Cuba one?
Cuba,
Amos.
Zia.
Santa Ana, yeah. Or is it Sandia? Santa Ana, isn't it?
Santa Ana.
Yeah.
Sandia is not in it.
Yeah, Santa Ana.
And
So and the county picks up some of the other little communities that have not contributed anything. Because we need to provide emergency care to everybody, emergency services to everybody. Yes, sir.
So is this prorated then on the size of the
Yes.
community?
How many calls you get?
We'll
So
have more
you pay
information
for-
about the JPA at the next meeting on May 13th.
Oh, yeah, it will be
So
more.
this
more-
was asked to be on our ICIP. So this is the one that was approved last year. Doesn't necessarily mean that it needs to be number one this year. We'll talk more to the JPA board and find out if it still needs to be on our ICIP. But they did it last year because they wanted to show support for the regional communication center since it was brand new.
See, the county is the fiscal agent. And they wanted to get as much assistance from all the contributing members of the ultimate JPA, SCREC, whatever we're going to call the emergency call center, so we could get the funding. And I don't think we're going to have to put a number one, but I have, as I said, I have not talked to Wayne Johnson. He's the county manager. Okay, we really don't need to spend a lot of time on this
No,
because you
just-
need to.
We wanted to know if there were any projects that council felt need to be on the ICIP. And then if so, we can add those and then we'll do it like we did last year. We'll have you rank those projects. We've had a request from the police department for the police vehicles at 200,000 to remain on the ICIP. Request from fire to prioritize generators for all of the village facilities for next year. And the standalone bathroom funding.
Yes.
So has this been sorted?
Burkett go first.
Okay, so just, I guess, 2 questions. One is, what is our deadline? When do you need this by from us? And then the second one is, can we get a handful of these projects we have partial funding on already?
Mhm.
I would love to know if any of that funding has timelines on it. So we definitely don't leave projects on the table where there's money already tied to them. So if we can get anything that has kind of a ticking time clock that we should be paying attention to, that would
Yeah.
be helpful.
Yeah, so we have to have a resolution approving this list by the June 24th meeting. So we have some time. That's why we're talking about it now. And the state has said that they would like to see this on an agenda at least twice at each municipality. So yeah, as long as we have stuff in by, have a list approved by you by June 24th. So I can get you a better list of which projects are funded, what the deadlines are for that capital outlay that we've already received. And then we can go from there.
Councilor Murray.
Because I was just wondering, has this been sorted like our last IC?
So this is your last ICIP.
Okay.
So this is how you guys ranked your projects last year. So this is what was submitted to the state after your approval last June.
Yeah, but I think we had a header somewhere that separated the funded versus the.
I did do a separate spreadsheet for you guys that was actual purchases versus capital projects where it was building something.
And we ranked them, remember?
Yeah, and we did a Survey Monkey. I was going to do that again this year unless anybody really, really hated that, but it did make it a little easier for me to know instead of me having to do all the math and.
Well, if
you
I
know.
had my druthers, I'd like to see Top Form Arena moved up.
Okay.
But
Well, you can certainly move it up and
I guess it depends on
weighted
the rest of
accordingly.
the counselors I have to convince.
Well, actually you have to convince the people who have the money.
Right. Well, that's
that's
always
the
the case, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the problem. Yes, sir, Councilwoman.
I'm just wondering, Melanie, is this list updated with what we did receive this year?
No, I have not made any changes to it at all. This is exactly what you approved last year with
Some
the
of the
requested
funds have been
numbers.
used and some of these are going to come off. Yeah.
And when will we see that list?
I can have that for you at the next meeting.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to know if there were any projects that the council felt needed to be prioritized or any
So
pet
you want to
projects
put
that
the
anybody
Top
has.
Form Marina cover at the top, huh?
Yeah, right. They can put the dispatch in there right underneath it.
It'll be covered.
I'm hoping that we don't have to put anything about, because it's going to open. And it's going to start working. They're almost there. We're doing
Well, I'm sure
JPA. We'll do the JPA here next time.
Yeah, I'm sure that, we got to pay the piper something.
Yeah. Our percentage of the emergency call center in the past is something like 4%, 6%, maybe. Anthony, does that sound familiar? Okay. So we're not a big funder of this thing. I mean, we use it.
But with Rio Rancho removed from that equation, our share will jump significantly, correct?
Actually, it won't probably, it may jump a little bit, but not, I don't know it's going to jump significant. It didn't look like it was jumping significant. Yes, sir, woman.
Mayor, can you tell us where we stand on the standalone restrooms for Lawn Trotter
We have a
Park?
grant and we're trying to come up with the other $100,000 to $200,000 that we're going to need.
Okay.
We have a $203,000 grant that's good for a couple of years. Yes.
But that's for the park,
Lawn
right?
Trotter Park.
Yeah. So what about down by the rec center? I mentioned about maybe installing a permanent facility down there.
Well, we'll see. Well,
We could probably use some of the lodgers tax funds towards those bathrooms.
yeah, but that's 30 grand.
Right.
These things are,
Well, 15 grand because we could only use half of what's
Yeah.
in there, but every
toilet
little bit
paper.
helps.
Seed money.
Tariffs on toilet paper.
you can certainly bring it up as a possibility. But we have bathrooms, at the gym and we have bathrooms at the.
Well, I know, but
rec
during the
center.
balloon fiesta, I know my son is, since he cruised with the balloon group, he stopped and tried to use that facility, those porta potties that were down there, and he
They were
said
missing.
they stink to high heaven. And so I was just wondering if we had something a little bit more permanent, closer maybe to where, maybe the growers market or,
Well, we
the
want
folks
to
that-
provide security for it wherever it is.
Yeah.
And so it's got to be somewhere relatively close to developed area.
yeah.
And we're not going to stick it out on the corner of the street or something where anybody can use it, live in
Well,
it.
Well, I understand that, but I think given the number of cars that park in that parking lot, I'm sure the folks coming off to the field would probably appreciate having something to facilitate, without having to walk back up to the north or to the west side, to the gym.
I think we had talked about that last year,
Yeah.
about possibly once we get the bathrooms installed over here at Entrada Park, that could be the next place that they could go. Maybe just like a 2-stall, because the one over here is going to have 4. And so that's a smaller footprint over there,
Yeah.
but that is kind of in Lynn's.
We can ask.
Yeah.
We can certainly put it on there.
Yeah, I think the standalone bathrooms that we have on the ICIP list, it was more than, if I'm remembering correctly, than just the cost of the bathrooms over here at La Entrada Park, because the idea is that we would put them in some other places, but that was going to be phase 1 at La Entrada Park, because that was the most requested place for them to be.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. Anyone else? Okay. So let's move on to discussion of the comprehensive plan. Who wants to start?
And we do have some of the committee members here if you have questions for the comp plan committee.
Yes, sir.
I have
Councilman.
one question for the comp plan committee, if possible. Just, I wanted to
Any
get
one particular person?
whoever feels verbose.
Well, that may not be the best description.
Right, right. Oh, yeah, whoever feels succinct then, how about that? Go the opposite direction. I just want to know, I'm looking at planning and zoning's edits and just wanted to get any feedback they have, if there were any of these that they feel strongly about that they disagree with, as kind of a starting point, or if they think that these are reasonable edits.
Chris? Please come to the podium, please.
Members of the council, Administrator Curry, actually, two of us signed up to speak.
Oh, you did?
We did.
We didn't have it as a comment item on the,
Oh.
on the sign
Right,
up sheet.
we
But that's
wrote
why
it
I-
in because you didn't have it there, but we do have a couple of introductory comments we'd like to make, if that's all right.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. First of all, I wanted to remind you, this has been a long slog, a lot longer than we anticipated it would be. And by the way, thank you, Mayor, Council, and Administrative Curry for giving me the opportunity to speak. As I said, this has been a long slog, and to take you back to how we began, we did a lot of interviews and data collection from the community. The vast majority of that was face-to-face with members of the public. From the data we collected, we identified 6 values that the community felt they wanted to preserve over the next 10 years. From those values, we developed goals, and then we developed recommendations to help achieve the goals, which would support the values. I want to remind you, this is a 10-year plan. It was not intended that everything be done in the next 6 months. Although some items, such as lot controls, you might want to consider early before we don't have any more space to preserve. Other issues, such as finding ways for our seniors to continue to live in the village when they can no longer take care of an acre or more of property, as we just heard earlier this evening, some of that discussion is going to be much more complicated, and it's going to be difficult to solve. But we heard clearly from the public that that is an area of concern for them. They want to continue living in the village when they can no longer take care of an acre or more of property. The other thing I wanted to say is to express our gratitude to the Planning and Zoning Commission, because they gave us an opportunity to assess the comments given to us by the village attorney and by the administration. And they gave us an opportunity to review those, to present our viewpoint on those, and incorporate some of the items back into the document that had been suggested to be deleted. So I wanted to give our thanks to the Planning and Zoning Commission for giving us that opportunity. Now, Councilor Burkett, you have a specific question?
No, just, I mean, they made roughly 10 comments as far as specific edits. I mean, most of them looked reasonable to me, but I have a lot less blood, sweat, and tears invested in this project than you do. And I wanted to make sure there was no real inflammatory ones in there before we kind of get into this discussion.
Only one, which Sarah Gerhart will address in a minute, and that has to do with the Department of Community Planning.
Okay.
Okay, all the other comments that Planning and Zoning entered into the document, we found we could live with.
Yeah. Perfect. Thank you.
So if it's all right, well, I'll turn it over to Sarah and she can elaborate on
That
that
would be
comment.
fantastic. Thank you.
Hi, Mr. Mayor, councilors, and Administrator Curry. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I've been asked by the Comprehensive Review Committee, the PR, oh, I should put my glasses on, the CPRC, to address the revision number 1 in the transmittal letter. But first, the committee does want to thank the Planning and Zoning Commission, as Chris just said, for their work, and we'd like to let them know that we really appreciate and respect their thoughts and suggestions. But the CPRC would like to let you know that we're against that P&Z revision number 1 and ask the council to restore the original CPRC recommendation to create a Department of Community Planning and Project Management. Comprehensive plan document articulates many community values, goals, and needs. Our public presentations last October highlighted the major changes that separate this plan from previous plans. The plan goals require professional planning and project management for Corralis's infrastructure needs, facility needs, and for master planning. This helps attract funding. Corralis's complex community relationships include both internal and external governmental partnerships and services. Corralis needs a professional planning department to coordinate all the short and long-term projects and plans in order to efficiently work within our limited capital and human resources. New Mexico state statutes recognize this need by requiring even small communities to have a planning and zoning department and commission. Small communities, including Corrales for the last 20 or 30 years, can mostly get away with, as they say, all Z and no P. The proposed revision to the comprehensive plan for a system of community planning and project management sounds very much like the status quo. Today's governing body may not have the budget or desire to create this department, but comprehensive planning is for 10 years and sets the bar high. The point is, the community has expressed several values and goals which require a very robust and professional approach than the status quo. Over the 2 years since we started the planning process, we have also seen a shift. The Corrales Council and the citizen groups are already more engaged and implementing many of the things in the plan with the outside agencies and organizations for matters of major impact to our community and core values. The planning processes over these 2 years for this plan and for other community plans, such as the multi-use facility and the Arts and Cultural District, have engaged a large part of the community and its volunteers. And we've had very many difficult conversations, and you've had very many difficult votes on these things. Community planners are certified professionals. They're trained for outreach in the community and for visioning, for the visioning needed to develop projects, and with skills for effective coordination and implementation of multiple projects. They have skills to implement the complex zoning tools included in the plan, such as conservation easements, transfer of development rights, as we heard earlier, and complex analysis for variances and for ordinances. A community planner will benefit the village by retaining and organizing the volunteers that work and work that has that as a government and community we have already started. Regarding these difficult conversations, our community should be able to talk up front about gentrification because the CPRC heard from the community that it's a contributor or a cause to many of the threats to the plan's value. Threats such as the loss of farmland and open space, property assessments, traffic, noise, and other incongruences for keeping animals, livestock, and other historic uses. Some neighbors are marginalized in their hometown, and this has to matter to us all. To be clear, raising these issues does not mean that new homes and newcomers are not welcome, and the plan does not intend that any one group, whether the Corrales descendant families or developers, be given special treatment. It's never said that anywhere in the plan. Convivencia, which you heard about earlier from Ken Martinez, is a planning process that emphasizes grassroots conversations. It's almost like a descendant of truth and reconciliation type of conversations. But it needs skilled facilitation, and it supports many of the comprehensive plan's core values, such as especially value 3 for the community, and can build unity within the community to achieve its goals and to reckon with the changes. With good planning, you know it by its fruits. If the process is building a stronger community, it is good, but the inverse is also true. So the CPRC respectfully asks the governing body reject the transmittal item number 1 and retain our committee's language for goal 6.4 in the comprehensive plan to create a Department of Community Planning and Project Management. I will say in response to 2 other things in there, the one that is, oops, when I zoom in, I lose it, but the one that deals with 3-1.3 for the transfer of development rights, that is a change that talks about the receiving zone. That was discussed. If you go back and look at the Planning and Zoning Committee, it was discussed heavily by them. And then the other one that deals with the percentages of lot coverage, I only want to say that when we as a committee changed from the 65%, right now it says 35% can be built on. And we looked at that and we flipped it because the intention with 1 acre zoning was always to preserve open space. And the 35% lot coverage is, as we're seeing right now, is filling the whole lot. We did analysis and we came up with the 75% because when you already look at the setbacks of a lot, you're already at 25% of the lot. So we were starting to say then we're going to, you know, if the intention is to say 50% of the lot is left open, then we added the extra setbacks on the other side. And that's where we came up with increasing the, or sort of decreasing the built environment footprint. So do you have any questions before I sit down?
Yes, sir. Councilor Murray.
All right, let's get back to the TDR because everything about the TDR that I have read, it is about increasing density, which means it goes against everything in the village that we hold dear, which is 1 acre lots or 2 acre lots, depending on what zone you're in. So the TDR, as far as I'm concerned, it's dead in the water for me. I'm not going to support it because just for that very reason that if you like it was exampled, you know, if you have acreage up in the hills and you've got acreage down here, you can transfer those rights and increase the density of that acreage on the lower side. I mean, if you've only got 5 acres here on the low side and you got 5 acres up there, and you transfer that, you build 10 homes, which means half-acre lots. And that means more wells, more drilling, and more septic system if they're not close to an affluent line. So I'm not going to support TDRs. And I think councilors, we need to pull that 3- whatever it is, it's the 3-1-.3 from the comprehensive plan. I don't support it.
Councilor Murray, it's fine. The only thing I would say is that TDRs have been in our ordinances since for 50 years.
Where?
Nobody does it because when it's been proposed, it never gets accepted.
No, I mean, where's it written in our ordinances?
It is. Yeah, it's in it. It's in it now. Or in the comp plan. I don't know. And
Well-
anyhow, it is allowed. Remember,
Alright.
Ed Passage proposed it. He proposed it
Oh, of
and
course he
it
would.
died. But anyhow, the point, the reason that we have it in there is there are 2 things that could come out of it. It'll never pass if it goes to planning and zoning because the neighbors don't want the increased density next to them,
Then we
just
don't-
like everybody says, and it, you know, and it's not fair.
Well-
But there are 2 things that it can be used for. And one is if there's ever going to be senior housing in the NCOD in the far northwest sector. So you have to, you know, and I mean, I'm just saying it out loud, right? So you create a receiving zone and you go through that process. And if that happens, then you get your senior housing. The second thing that it's used for is at a county-wide level. Most places in the country do it at a county level. The county would say, we want to preserve arable farmland in our county. And then they create receiving zones in other places.
You know, that's fine for the county because they got more acreage.
The county won't do it.
Well,
because
I
it
mean,
doesn't-
yeah. So why even bother with it if they're not going to do it? Because the other part.
Senior housing.
All right. No, let me back up on this because my understanding is with Albuquerque, what they have is a 600-page manual. We don't even have the staff that supports doing all the complex work of implementing a TDR. If we just put the basic thing in there and say we're going to accept TDRs, that means that we got a Pandora's box that we're opening up. So,
Well,
and it violates
Yeah.
the very core tenets of our village.
Okay. That anyhow, I respect.
Yeah.
Mayor, may I just interject one thing?
Sure.
I do feel like it's important for the council to know that the item number 1 that they have referred to about the Department of Community Planning, that change was requested by our attorney, not the Planning and Zoning Department. So that's just something to consider, that it was suggested by the attorney for legal reasons to be taken out or to be changed to a system of community development, not a department. So just to, so that you are aware of where that change came from.
Councilor Burkett.
So just to comment on the TDRs, I mean, I have similar fears of the TDRs as a weapon, but the one instance that she mentions, if this group is ever going to consider senior housing and increase density in any form, this gives us a tool to buy back some of that density elsewhere potentially. That would be the only scenario where I think it's beneficial, but if we don't have TDRs, then there's a chance we could talk about higher density senior housing and not be able to preserve some other acreage as a requirement for that.
The senior housing can be done by the special zoning district. So that's separate from the issue of the TDRs.
Well, and that's what I'm saying. I mean, we could do the senior housing via special zoning district, but we wouldn't be able to trade for any open space elsewhere within the village, where if we did have a TDR process, we could say, yes, we'll entertain senior housing at a higher density. But in exchange for that, whoever wants to develop that needs to go find us 6, 8, 10 acres that they're going to preserve to trade off for that. And I know for the neighbors next to the senior housing, they're not going to love it. The neighbors next to the 10 acres are going to love it. That's some of the trade-offs that happen. But I think the more overlying issue is whether this comprehensive plan says TDRs in it or TDRs out of it. Every one of these still has to go to planning and zoning. Every one of these still is subject to ordinances. Every one of these is still subject to votes. It's still subject to appeals. We are not going to read page 42 of the comprehensive plan when somebody says they want to put in senior housing and all go out and start looking for 10 acres to trade for it. I mean, it's not a binding document. It's a guiding document that we hope to look through the lens of.
It's a plan.
Right.
Yeah, that plan.
It's a plan. Councilor Wolf.
A couple things. First of all, I agree with your argument about the Community Planning and Management Office. I think a perfect example is that we have acquired any number of properties in the last several years, including Gonzalez and Anderson, Wells Fargo Bank, the administrative parking lot. It's been years, nothing has happened because we don't have direction. We may not have money, but that's a separate issue. But we don't have direction on developing those properties. And I think it's that an office dedicated to planning and management could do that. But my main point I wanted to ask has to do with goal 3.3. I don't know if you know the numbers by heart, but I'll just quote it. Require new development to preserve the traditional historic scale of the built environment. And my question is, does that mean you limit the size and design to meet the Corrales environment? Because you mentioned later on, you're not going to recommend any building standards for the village.
Yeah,
Architectural standards, right?
That's right. I think we were hoping that the lot coverage would also restrictions that we were talking about, or the flipping it to preserve open space, would start to scale back into effect.
Because of the large square foot houses, the 6,000 square foot houses, those kinds of things, because you wouldn't be able to build those on the small.
Well, you'd have to leave 50% of the lot open for, hopefully without your half-acre driveway on it that's gravel and then becomes asphalt later.
And then the second point, and I just want to know if this is in conflict, support diverse architectural and building styles. Quote, the village will not adopt architectural design standards. Are those two in conflict? In other words, in terms of the traditional historic scale and built environment and the Corrales environment, are they in conflict at all?
No. Architectural standards are different from lot controls. What we heard overwhelmingly from the people in this village is they like the eclectic nature of Corrales's architecture. They don't want us to be Taos. They don't want us to be Santa Fe with everything being brown stucco. They enjoy the fact that we have a diverse housing stock. It creates interest. That's one thing. The other thing is, as Sarah was saying, to flip our land use to a perception of preserving space on a lot. That's what we should be looking at doing. Not that we're building a house on a lot or building a garage on a lot, but we're preserving space. So how do we preserve the space on that lot? One suggestion we made was to reduce your lot coverage to 25% and then cluster the built environment to 50% of the lot, so that 50% of the lot would be open space. It could be farmland, it could be a vineyard, it could be turnout areas for livestock, it could be left wild. So the emphasis, we just wanted to flip the perception, the paradigm, So that what we're trying to do now in the village is preserve open space, not just the open space that the community has purchased, but the open space in every single neighborhood in the village. We heard open space over and over and over again.
So what you're suggesting by limiting it to 25% and a height restriction of
That's
26
not,
feet.
that, we did not change
But-
that.
With 26 feet, you're limiting the amount of square footage a house could have.
That's the effective result.
Right. Thank you.
Well, if the 25% was just the house.
Well, it's the
It's the
That's
built-in-
11,000
impermeable,
square feet.
It's
impermeable,
the impermeable
Right.
surface,
right.
Yeah, that would be 11,000 square feet.
which is still a lot of space.
That's a lot of house, but that's just that specific impervious space. You could have, any number of things. And you have a driveway.
A
Right.
barn,
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Councilor Mier.
Thank you. And if the attorney could listen on my question here, and I understand your persistence, which I like, but on the other hand, for the senior housing, I mean, everybody wants it, but anywhere, even if you put it in here, if you have a TDR that somebody else is gonna have to vote for it, the receiving end of it is, I think, something it's just an assumed. The receiving end is usually an area. It's a designated area. As we just quickly pass through it, it's a little bit more intense than just that. But with that in mind, the assumption is that you're gonna have senior housing for the people that are in Corrales.
You're right.
And you can't do that. It's not gonna happen.
Oh, no, of course you wouldn't restrict it to just
Well,
Corralinos, but you
I think
couldn't
that
do
needs
that.
to be heard because then
But-
everybody's gonna say, oh, I don't know if I want that anymore, because what you're doing is you're building a nice, I'm assuming that, okay? You can build a very nice area, put in very nice senior housing, and they're all from Albuquerque and Bernalillo. And one from Corrales.
Yeah.
Because you
Obviously,
cannot
you-
restrict them to be only from Corrales.
Correct. I'm responding to what we heard from the community.
I hear,
And
and
what
I'm
we heard-
responding to what I heard from you, saying it's gonna be senior housing for Corrales. You cannot say that. Or for Coraleños.
We could offer the opportunity for Coraleños to move it. I mean, sure. But at this point, what I've seen over 40 years is that effective, useful, productive members of the community, when they get to the point where they can't handle their acre and their large house, they have to leave. Our former mayor just left. We had Pauline Eisenstadt had to leave. All of these people have to leave because there's no place for them to stay here. We heard that over and over again. So what mechanism can we develop here that would provide a space for our seniors to continue to live here and continue to be productive members of our community?
I understand that.
Right.
But
So
again,
cluster
you're saying
housing,
that- You're saying that, but you cannot deliver that. I mean, you cannot
we're not,
deliver.
I'm not trying to do that.
You may not be able to deliver that as much as I would like it and others would like it, but there's gonna be, because once you build that facility, whether you USDA monies or whatever monies are left after this administration, but that's another whole issue. But those monies, you cannot say they're just for these people, even within Sandoval County.
Right.
We can't do that. And I'm
May I say
afraid of that.
something? May I say something? I
Please.
think you're really getting down in the weeds here.
I am getting into the weeds because
Because
this.
it's not a law, it's a plan.
I understand that.
And
Mr. Mayor, I
it may all
understand that.
change- It may all change in 2 or 3 years.
I understand that.
And it
But
may
on the
change
other hand,
you
if
in
you,
3 or 4 years, who
Yeah.
knows?
if would, you understand why I'm not gonna.
I know what you're saying.
I'm
and you
not gonna
can't
support this.
legislate-
This is why, because I don't like leading people on because they like to hear what they like to hear,
Councilor Wallman.
because they can't.
Just for clarification, if I may. What you're suggesting is senior housing for Corrales, not senior housing for Carolinos. Is that correct?
We're trying to devise a way where there's an opportunity for people in Corrales, because they're the ones that are talking to us. We weren't talking to Rio Rancho. We weren't talking to Albuquerque. We were talking to Coraleños. And what Coraleños said to us is, we want an ability to continue to live in this community when we no longer can care for our 1 or 2 acre home.
But as the counselor has said, you're not suggesting that you are requiring that.
Of course
the-
not.
Okay.
What we're trying to do is provide an
An opportunity.
opportunity.
And to do that, you're gonna have to get that receiving end, set up an area.
TDRs are only one tool.
No,
Cluster
this
housing
we're
is
talking
another
about
tool.
TDR right here.
I
There's
know.
many tools. You're not talking about any tools. We're talking about TDR right now and what it represents and what it respects.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. So on that line, we had cluster housing years ago. We had that ordinance in place and the last administration took it out. And that was, it took the development rights out of that property. If it was 5 acres, you could put 5 homes in a cluster area and preserve the other 4 acres as open space. But the previous administration took it out.
What's
Why?
a democracy?
Well, I know, I voted against it. You know, I'll say that. Now, the problem we have is the impact of cluster housing on adjacent properties and their wells. If you put cluster housing next to a subdivision or, you know, down on somebody's property or next to somebody's property, you got to worry about whose well you're impacting on because you now have 5 homes probably hooked up to 1 well. So anyway, I mean, that's just a comment. One of the other things on on goal 3-5, you talk about safety and maintenance of public and private roads. How do we resolve that with private roads? Because that is a part of their property.
Right. We set forth a recommendation, but some of these things are going to have to be worked out in terms of details. You can work out an agreement with those private property owners.
Well, yeah, but that has to be the entire group of private owners because somebody, you know, 2 houses in all the way to the top of the road may agree. And the first guy says, no way, I'm not letting anybody come on to it.
Then
But-
it doesn't happen.
Well, I know, I understand.
But the goal is there as an aspirational goal.
So
Okay.
may I say something? These are, as she just said, these are goals, these are desires, these are wants, these are plans. You know, if, as you go through this, you know, you say, well, these are good plans. We can probably work on an ordinance to cover those plans, to take care of that issue.
Yeah.
What you're getting here is the information from the community and what they would like to see in the future. And we may not do any of it. We may do half of it.
Well,
We may, you know, who knows?
Mayor, that's the problem.
I shouldn't say we.
Because
It may
once
not
it's
be-
in a plan, it's already there. It's written in black and white as probably as, you know, wants and desires. And no one, you know, not this administration, not this council, but the future ones may take it up and run and people may not like it.
Well, there are some restrictions. You know, you do have guardrails. You have NMED who says what you can use, what you can do with your land. We have ordinances on the size of the lot and the size of the house right now.
Yeah, but we don't have anything on TRDs. I mean,
And
how
all
much,
those can change.
how much work are we gonna have to put into to develop a TRD ordinance? It is adequate that doesn't,
You don't have to do a TRD ordinance.
oh,
This was a suggestion.
no, I mean, once it's in
You
the,
don't have to do it. I'll say it one more time. You don't have to do that.
okay.
Someone else may do that. They may elect.
Well, then that's the
And
point
they
of,
may go
that's the
elsewhere
point
and
of
get a
taking
plan.
it out of the plan, because if it isn't in the plan, then they're not gonna take it up.
Well, I think it's in the plan just so it's there because people have talked about it and you know, someone may come along and say, hey, this is a really good idea. We like this idea. Let's see
Mayor-
if we can make it work.
My
I mean,
understanding
Am I
was,
mistaken?
my understanding was the TRD was taken out of the plan and put back in.
Okay, fine.
Yeah.
Tony, did you want to speak?
Yeah. Oh, I was going to say that the comment
I wouldn't
Right.
have said that to you, but that's okay.
Clearly, anything that's implemented as a result of this plan, the governing body has the right to put controls on that. This is a democracy. You can put forth ideas to put controls on these and you vote them up or down, depending upon what kind of public input you get and what your own moral and ethical stance is. That's what a democracy is. So,
I don't disagree with that, Chris, but at the same time, it's a democracy to take things out of the plan if we want.
if you want to,
Yeah.
it's in your hands now.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, all of you guys who put all this time and effort into it. Appreciate it. So you guys need to study this a little bit and make your decisions, and then we'll bring it back in on May 13th.
Right. Right now I have
actual-
it tentatively scheduled for approval on May 13th.
Yeah, for approval. Okay.
If you feel like you need another discussion
Yeah,
though,
we'll
I'll need to know because we have to publish public notice that at least 2 weeks in advance of it being up for adoption.
Yeah. Councilor Norman.
Are there any plans to have any kind of community reaction to the plan? public hearing or?
I
The next
think
meeting will
it's-
be the public hearing.
I think we're gonna have.
The next
it
meeting
here,
will be the public hearing.
But I think it's been discussed for some
Not the
time.
final, yeah, I mean, it's been exhaustive, but but I'm just wondering if, the public has an opportunity to react to the,
Sure, they'll come here and talk to you.
okay, before we vote on. it.
Yeah, we'll have public comment like we do on anything else at
And
the
they
next
can
meeting.
send you emails like they do now.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to say there is no such thing as too much public comment. Right?
Right. Thank you for
Just
that.
take as much as you can, put it all into the mix and come up with the best decision you can. Thank you.
Okay, I need a motion to go into closed session.
So moves.
Second,
Okay, so Melanie, we have a motion pursuant to NMSA 1978 section 10-15-1H8. Village Council will go into executive session for a discussion of the purpose, acquisition, or disposal of real property or water rights by the public body. How do you vote, Councilor Murray?
Yes.
Councilor Burkett?
Aye.
Councilor Woolman?
aye.
Councilor Miera?
Yes, sir.
Okay, we are in executive session.
And the meeting recording is being paused.
So move.
Second.
Okay, we've had a motion.
sorry,
and a
who made the
second to
motion?
Come out of closed session
Who made the motion?
I made the motion.
Okay,
second.
and who
To the
seconded?
speaker.
Thank you.
pursuant to NMSA 1978 section 10-15-1H8. The village council was in executive session. No decisions or votes. No decision was made. No votes were taken. Okay, so now we'll move on to
We need
announcements.
a vote on that motion, please.
What?
A vote on the motion
yes.
to reopen.
How do you
Yes.
vote, Councilor Murray?
Yes.
Councilor Burkett?
Yes.
Councilor Woolman?
Aye.
And Councilor Miera?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. for
Thank
telling
you.
me that. Announcements for future agenda items. Community meeting with Senator Heinrich staff on April 30th at 5 PM, council chambers. So that's the community. We can come here with the community. It's
Yes.
not necessarily a council meeting.
It is not a council meeting. It was arranged by the Farmers Co-op. It's not going to be the congressman himself, just his staff, but they do want to talk about how federal funding is affecting the farmers.
Okay. And you're going to do
I will
notice
be
of a
here.
quorum, potential quorum?
Yeah.
Okay. Budget workshop is 5/8 at 2 PM. Appeal hearing of SUB. What does that stand for, by the way?
Subdivision.
Subdivision? 25-02, 513 at 5:30 PM. So it'll be before the meeting. We'll do an approval of the comprehensive plan. I want you to put plan in bold every time you put it.
Capital too.
Capitals too, yeah.
You got it.
I want to make sure everybody realizes it's just a plan. It's not a law. Because I keep hearing it's a law. Approval of ordinance 25-01 municipal lot size 513. Presentation for Farmland Preservation and Agricultural Commission on 513. We're going to go into closed session for that.
I believe so. We will also have a presentation from Amy Bell on the 13th about the interior drain. It's not on here, but just so council
Oh,
knows.
so she'll do it
Yeah.
early in the meeting?
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's a lot going on the 13th, so I probably won't invite the assessor to the next meeting. It'll probably be after that.
Well, like we can do is tell her that we would like to have her visit with us and see when's a good time
Yeah.
first.
Yeah.
We're going to do an approval of the JPA Emergency Dispatch Center. The JPA for the new Emergency Dispatch Center on May 13th. Yeah, we should be able to get that out as soon as it's approved.
Yeah.
I gotta tell Wayne about that. Discussion of noise ordinance changes on June 10th. Do you guys think you'll have something by then?
I haven't been in the loop on that.
Oh, okay. I know
Randy says
Randy
yes.
was working on it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Randy says we'll have something by the 10th.
Okay.
Right.
I don't know. He's real conservative.
Yeah.
And we had a very good discussion on the phone about it.
Can we bring drinks and pizza to the next meeting on the 13th since we have so much going on the 13th?
Yes, ma'am, you sure can. Huh? Okay.
There we go.
Okay.
So,
Any other things you would like to add?
so we have a budget discussion on 5/8, but when do we bring it before council? First draft or first
What was the date that you had?
I believe it'll be that second meeting in May. I need to
So
double check
27?
with Jolene and find out when she needs to have everything input into the
Yeah,
system.
she said she'd be ready on the 8th.
Well, yes, but then we have to do a resolution of approval of the preliminary budget. And so, but I believe the budget is due to the state by the 30th.
Yes.
And so if we don't approve it until the 27th, does that give her enough time to input everything into the
Oh,
system?
okay.
So I need to get with Jolene. So there's a possibility it could come on the 13th as well. Yeah.
Councilor Woolman.
Just a quick question, Ron, what are you expecting from us on the 8th in the budget discussion?
Anything that you want to have included or not included in the budget.
It doesn't mean it'll make the final cut, but it means this is your wish list. This is what you'd like to see.
And we do have a couple of emails from some counselors, Counselor Murray and Counselor Waldman. I've given those email requests to Jolene, so she's aware.
But you don't necessarily have to, I mean, it'd be better if you email something in advance of it so that we can have it on paper. But if you get a wild head on that day, you know, throw it up there.
You want numbers or just ideas?
Both.
Okay.
Yeah. Because if we're gonna put it in the budget, we need numbers.
Okay, anybody else? Anything else? All right.
Oh, and council, we need your signatures on the resolution to publish and post before you go, please.
All right. This business session is finished. Meeting is adjourned.